Did you know that this version of the Ford Crown Victoria was universally hated? Or that this model of the Vic is almost forgotten by everyone? In this video, we will be looking at every Crown Victoria model from the very beginning all the way up to its end. But to do that, we have to go way back, even before the beloved Panther platform. The year is 1955. Ford's flagship Fairlane lineup has just launched, and sitting at the very top of it is a trim level unlike anything the company had built before. They called it the Crown Victoria. It wore a stainless steel arch across its roofline, a literal chrome crown, and it came with a feature that no mainstream American car had ever offered. But this was a dangerous move. The Fairlane was Ford's answer to the post-war American dream. Chrome, two-tone paint, panoramic windshields, and engines that felt effortless on the new interstate highways being carved across the country. It replaced the Crestline as Ford's top-of-the-line offering, and in its first year it helped Ford record its best sales year since 1923. America was buying, but inside that lineup, one model stood apart from everything else. The Crown Victoria was not just a better trimmed Fairlane, it had a lower, sleeker roofline than the other models, borrowed from the Mercury Montclair to give it a more dramatic silhouette. And running up one B-pillar across the roof and down the other was that stainless steel arch. Ford's own marketing called it the Crown of Chrome. Everyone else called it the Tiara. Whatever you called it, there was nothing else like it on an American road in 1955. And yet almost nobody bought it. Of all the Fairlanes Ford sold in 1955, only 1,999 buyers chose the Skyliner option. The following year, that number collapsed to 603. The car that was supposed to be a glimpse into the future was, in practice, an oven. The acrylic panel trapped heat with ruthless efficiency. In the American South, sitting under that roof on a summer afternoon was genuinely unbearable. Buyers who had walked into showrooms excited by the concept walked back out and ordered a steel roof instead. The few hundred cars that couldn't find American buyers were shipped to Sweden, where the climate was considerably more cooperative. The most futuristic Ford of 1955 ended up in Scandinavia. Yes, the initial Crown Vic failed, but the name didn't disappear forever. It was filed away, kept in reserve, waiting. And 25 years later, when Ford needed a name worthy of the top of its full-size lineup, it reached back into its own history and pulled the Crown Victoria out of storage. But what exactly made Ford decide it was a good idea to bring it back? By the late 1970s, the American auto industry was in retreat. The oil crisis had flipped buyer priorities overnight, and the old formula, massive, powerful, thirsty, was suddenly a liability. Ford's answer was the Panther platform, introduced for 1979. The new LTD was 15 inches shorter than the car it replaced, and yet somehow the interior felt just as large. The Panther architecture was rear-wheel drive and body-on-frame, old school by design, deliberately so. Ford was not chasing trends. It was building something durable, something fleets could trust, something that police departments and taxi companies could beat to death and keep running. The platform launched under the Ford LTD and Mercury Marquis nameplates, powered by overhead valve V8s in either 4.9 or 5.8 liter form. Then in 1980, Lincoln climbed aboard, and with Lincoln came prestige. Ford took the opportunity to badge the top trim of the LTD as the Crown Victoria, complete with a vinyl half-roof treatment and the kind of interior jewelry that luxury buyers demanded at the time. It featured a heavily revised version of the B-pillared roof that echoed the original 1955 model. Buyers responded, and the name stuck. After this, you probably expect the model to have a great time, but the next years were some of the most miserable the Panther platform had seen. A fuel crisis hangover forced Ford to offer a miserable 4.2-liter V8 as standard, 120 horsepower pulling a car that weighed nearly 2 tons. By the end of 1982, the only buyers who could get the strong 5.8-liter were police departments. Civilians made do with what they were given. In 1983, Ford split the LTD nameplate in two. The smaller Fox platform LTD became a mid-size car, while the full-size version took on a new identity, the LTD Crown Victoria. A fuel-injected 4.9-liter became standard. It made 130 horsepower. Nobody celebrated, but it ran reliably, which was, increasingly, the entire point. The decade rolled on with incremental updates. Electroluminescent coach lights in 1984. A horn button moved back to the steering wheel center in 1985. A digital clock in 1987, which Ford apparently considered newsworthy. The two-door body was discontinued at the end of 1987. Nobody mourned it either. And then in 1988, a nose and tail refresh smoothed out the boxy edges just enough to carry the car into its final years as a first-generation machine. By 1991, the LTD name and the station wagon were both gone. The Panther was ready for its second act. This period I like to call the Reinvention because by any measure, the 1992 Crown Victoria was a different car. The boxy, formal silhouette of the 1980s gave way to something rounded, aerodynamic, and unmistakably influenced by the Taurus. For the most part, the old LTD Crown Victoria had come with a 5.0-liter V8, making around 150 horsepower in its final form. The new Crown Vic benefited from the new 4.6-liter Modular V8, and despite the smaller displacement, made more power right out of the box with 190 horsepower. Police and touring versions with dual exhaust pushed that to 210. It was the first overhead cam V8 in a mass-produced American non-luxury vehicle, and versions of it would power every Panther car built through 2011. The public wasn't sure about the face. The 1992 model launched without a grille, which gave it a smooth, featureless nose that critics found bland. Ford added a grille for 1993 to address buyers who didn't like the look of the first models. It also gained a passenger-side airbag in 1994 because passengers, as Ford diplomatically noted, matter too. By 1995, the interior had been thoroughly overhauled with new gauges, new door panels, and a redesigned steering wheel. The Crown Victoria was finally starting to feel like a car of the decade it was living in. Here is the thing nobody planned for. The Crown Victoria became the de facto patrol car of American law enforcement almost by accident. Through the 1980s, the Chevrolet Caprice was the dominant police vehicle in the United States. It had the institutional trust, the fleet contracts, and the familiarity. When GM discontinued the Caprice in the mid-1990s, the Crown Victoria became the new primary police cruiser. There was no competition, no alternative. Fleet buyers needed a body-on-frame, rear-wheel drive sedan with a V8, and Ford was the only manufacturer still building one. In 1998, the Crown Victoria changed its face again. Its exterior underwent a complete redesign and now resembled what we all know and love today. A more upright nose, a taller stance, and a cleaner profile. The V8 was now rated at 200 or 215 horsepower, depending on exhaust configuration. The body shell was borrowed from the Grand Marquis, which gave the car more visual presence without requiring a new platform. It was the final exterior the Crown Victoria would ever wear. Up until 2002, the Vic had some very quiet but successful years. The models went through safety and mechanical upgrades. But 2002 was also the year that pushed Ford to fix the biggest problem with the Vic. In rear-end crashes, defective bracket designs could puncture gas tanks and catch fire. Ford's solution, implemented over the years, was to add new layers of protection to the tank, easily installed by dealers. It was not a recall in the traditional sense. It was a quiet correction to a quiet crisis, the kind that fleet buyers accepted and the general public barely noticed. Also in 2002, livery operators got something they had wanted for years: a Crown Victoria with a 6-inch wheelbase stretch. The stretched Crown Vic was intended for New York City's taxicab fleets and the livery market. The yellow cab version of the Crown Victoria would become as recognizable as the police version, two different uniforms, same car underneath. For the 2003 model year, the Ford Panther platform was re-engineered for the first time since its 1979 introduction. The frame was fully boxed and hydroformed. A new aluminum crossmember was added at the front. Rack and pinion steering replaced the old recirculating ball setup. Monotube shocks went in at the rear. The Crown Victoria's exterior didn't change a millimeter, but underneath it was the most significantly upgraded Panther ever built. It was also, quietly, the last major engineering investment Ford would ever make in the platform. After 2003, the Crown Victoria entered a long holding pattern. Minor interior updates, transmission revisions, the steady, unglamorous rhythm of a product that had stopped trying to compete in the marketplace and had instead become infrastructure. By 2008, Ford had closed its Wixom plant and moved Lincoln Town car production to St. Thomas Assembly in Ontario, consolidating all three Panther cars under one roof. Civilian Crown Victoria sales in the United States were quietly ended, with the car restricted to fleet sales only. If you wanted a Panther car for your driveway, you bought a Grand Marquis. If you wanted a Crown Victoria, you were either a police department, a taxi company, or a government agency. On September 15, 2011, the final Crown Victoria left St. Thomas Assembly. It was a 2012 model year car, marking the end of the Victoria's journey. This was the story of the Ford Crown Victoria, a car with such an amazing history that it defined America's streets for more than 2 decades. That's all for today. If you've ever ridden in one of these things, in the back of a taxi or the back of a patrol car, drop it in the comments. Thanks for watching.